Welcome back, mamas. Y'all, today we are going to talk about comparison, the good, the bad, and the ugly of comparison. And yes, there are all three. We're going to get into it today and what you can do to actually use comparison as a thing that is good in your life to have. But we're going to get into why also it can be a really bad thing. So let's get to it.
Do you wish you had control of your days, that you had a rhythm, but instead feel overwhelmed, scattered, and like there's never enough time? You're in the right place. I'm Danielle, a recovering workaholic, wife, and stay-at-home mom of 2 girls. I've learned how to reclaim my time and find purpose and freedom so I can be present with my kids and feel like myself again. Here, we embrace where we are, but we don't stay there. So if you're ready to trade the chaos for clarity, the guilt for grace, and the endless to-do list for aligned flow, grab the kiddos a snack and toss in that laundry because I know you're multitasking, and let's do this because your time, your purpose, and you matter.
Okay, mamas. So comparison, that is what we are going to talk about today. If you have been listening, you know that we are kind of in the middle of a little series that we're doing. We had been talking about JOMO. JOMO is the joy of missing out, opposite of the fear of missing out, right? The joy of missing out. It was something I had never heard of before, but I actually always talk about, just not in those words, the joy of missing out, but finding that joy, finding that fulfillment that you can have with your own life, finding what matters to you and why. Figuring this out for yourself, taking the time to build the foundation. This is what we talked about last week, which is kind of the first piece of how you can experience this JOMO in your life. Because we all want to have that joy of missing out, right? We want to be able to look at what everyone else is doing and be super happy for them. To be able to be content with what you have, with where you are, with what you're doing, and be happy in that, and also be able to see and look at and be exposed to, right? If you're on social media or no matter where you are, but when you see the successes of everyone else or what they are doing in their life and the things that they are doing in their life, that you can actually be joyful for them to be experiencing that at the same time that you are missing out on it, right? It's not missing out on it. You're not even looking at it like that. That FOMO that we so often have in this life, in this day and age, in our busy lives, we get to see so much of what everyone else is doing. And you always hear about this fear of missing out. It makes us sometimes do things that maybe we wouldn't often do if we had taken the time to consider what we really wanted or what we should be spending our time on. But we have this fear of missing out, or this fear that we're going to see this event or this thing having happened, like when we weren't there, and we're going to have this, "Oh, I wish we would have been there," or "we should have done that instead," or whatever it is, right? It can be something where we make decisions in the present based on this fear, but can also be something that we're like looking back on and wishing that we didn't have, right? This FOMO, right? And so what can we do to experience this joy? What can we do to experience this fulfillment instead of this fear, right? And live our lives that way. So this foundation building that we talked about last week is one of the main ways. It's actually the foundation. Let's call it the foundation. It's the root of this being able to experience this JOMO. And then number 2 is comparison. Something that we need to either not have at all in our life is comparison, or have comparison in our life as an inspiration. So I wanted to start with this quote. This one is from Bob Goff, and it says, "We won't be distracted by comparison if we are captivated with purpose." We won't be distracted by comparison if we are captivated with purpose. When we have taken the time to do this work, to figure out what's important to us and why, to figure out where we are at this moment in our life, this season in your life is likely different than any season you've experienced before, right? Why? Because our lives are different than they were yesterday, the day before. They're never the same, right? But it's very different in that you have these little humans that you are now staying at home with. You are now, raising these people, and your life looks different than it did before and than it will in the future. And so how can we not compare our lives to someone else's lives? Because we can do that when we have done this foundational work of the figuring out what's important to you and why. And then we can also do this when we are living with the contentment of that. When we are not when we know what our purpose is, right? And I believe that your purpose is maybe something that you're like searching for, but I believe everyone's purpose is really the same when you really sit and think about it, right? Everyone's purpose is to walk in alignment with God in your purpose. In your life and what God has given you in your gifts. It's not this thing that we're like striving for, right? It's not this thing that we're chasing after or this elusive thing that we are just trying to figure out, right? If we are walking in step and in alignment with God in our current life, in our strengths, in what we are good at, in what we are rooted in and what we want to be rooted in, right? Then that is when we are walking in our purpose with purpose. We are able to be confident in that, right? And we don't have to compare ourselves to other people. Other people may be doing things that you kind of wish that you could. You wish that you could have this, that, or the other thing that, you might see someone having these successes or see them having these trips or seeing them have these certain things that you want to do, or maybe they're doing these experiences that you want to experience with your kids, or maybe, their house looks the way that you want yours to look, right? And these are all things that we could be comparing ourselves to other people in such a way that it made us think poorly about ourselves. Like the good, the bad, and the ugly of comparison. The ugly would be literally being jealous of another person, or actually, wishing they didn't have what they had, right? Even wishing that you had it, or wishing that you had done those things that they were doing, or that you could do those right now. That is also a little bit ugly, because we are not them. They are not us. And we should not want to be like anyone else. But when we're constantly exposed to these things on social media, even just at pickup from daycare or preschool or whatever it is, it's running into people at the grocery store, typically you are going to see or hear about people's like highlight reel moments, right? You're not going to hear about their obstacles and the meltdowns, and unless they're experiencing a meltdown right now, right? You're probably not going to hear about all the things that are going wrong. You're more likely going to hear about what is going right. Right? You're going to hear about things that are going well, and you're going to have seen maybe some things that those people were doing in their lives that you wish you had done. And then you're going to ask them about it, and they're going to talk about it. And then maybe you're going to start to feel worse about yourself because, gosh, they got to do all of that. That is so amazing. And you're going deeper and deeper. Instead, what I want you to be able to feel is, gosh, that's amazing that they were able to do that. That's inspiring me to want to create that experience for my family, or that's inspiring me to want to create that, environment for my home, or it's inspiring me to want to take that trip, or whatever it is. Even if you're in a place where you don't know that you're able to take that trip right now, if that is something that is actually truly important to you, then you're going to figure out a way to take that trip. Right? We are going to figure out a way to take the trip that we want to have, right? When we have done this work, we're able to figure out the things that make us tick, the things that we want and we want to experience for our lives. And so we know that we are going to be able to experience things that are making us happy, and we don't have to sit there and fear missing out or think envious thoughts of other people, right? Or compare our lives to theirs, because they are maybe not in the same stage as you are. They're not in the same stage of life. They may have children who are a little bit older. They may have children who are younger. They may not have children at all, right? Like, are you comparing yourself to someone that is in a different chapter? They are in a different chapter. If they were a character in their book, they're maybe on chapter 10 when you're back here on chapter 1 or chapter 2. You're just getting started on this journey where they have been doing work like this or maybe other work on themselves and in their life, and they are at a different place than you are, right? Maybe not a different stage of motherhood necessarily, but just a different place in their journey to self-discovery, in their journey of what fulfillment looks like to them. They maybe have figured all of that out prior, or maybe it's possible that they are just putting a front-facing happy face on and they're able to experience some of these things, but they are truly not enjoying them themselves either. You guys, I say that because I know that a lot of times it was maybe looking on the outside like I was truly happy, like everything was going great. It may have looked like we were taking trips and we were doing these fun things and all of these things, but on the inside, I was unhappy and unfulfilled and wanting more and not happy with myself and not knowing why I felt like I was broken and not knowing why I was, all of these things that I still look back on and feel a little bit guilty about, right? Like I feel a little bit guilty that I was in that place. But I want you to know you're not alone and you don't need to feel guilty, because what you're experiencing, discomfort, this unhappiness, this feeling that you may be, not in the right place or not doing the right thing or what is the right thing or striving for your purpose, that is your body or your conscience or God's way of telling you that something is out of alignment. Something is out of alignment. And when you don't address the things that are out of alignment, and they start to get more out of alignment and more out of alignment. And then if you're anything like me, I hate this fake feeling. Like I hate feeling like I'm fake. And so when I'm out there and I'm putting on a positive face, because I don't want anyone to see that I'm hurting and I don't understand why I'm hurting. And so I'm putting on a positive face to, I guess, protect myself and other people from this, uncomfortable feeling that comes along with Danielle being unhappy, right? And I didn't want anyone to know I was unhappy because I didn't understand why I was unhappy, because I thought I should be happy and I had everything that I wanted. So on paper, I should have been happy, right? But I just wasn't. And it didn't make any sense to me. And looking back on it, the difference between me being happy and me being unhappy was a little bit of internal work. Now, was it hard? Yes. And was it super tricky to figure out for myself? And did it take a lot of time and energy? Yes. And did I do it the wrong way? Absolutely. Right. But once I started figuring it out, and once I started doing these exercises, and once I started doing all of the things that we talk about on this podcast, then I started uncovering the pieces of myself that I felt like I was missing and the reasons behind that. And it was so eye-opening. I felt so lost and I felt so found at the end, right? And nothing had changed other than internal. My external circumstances hadn't changed. I was a different person the whole time. It was just, I was trying to be a version of myself that no longer existed, I feel like. It's very hard to explain, although if you are sitting in this, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about, although you don't really know what the other side looks like yet. And that's what I'm trying to help you to get to, right? We do this foundational work first, and then we're talking about comparison today because that is something that used to really trip me up. I used to live in self-doubt and in this comparison mode where I was comparing myself to everyone else because I thought I wanted all of these different things, right? And so I was trying this and trying that and trying the other thing and trying to be all of the things that I thought looked good or that I thought would make me happy. Until I got still and clear on what actually would make me happy, I was not happy. And it's crazy to think that I spent all this time trying to figure that out. Right? So I spent a lot of time and energy chasing things that I thought would make me happy, that I thought would bring me joy. And really all it was me getting clear and getting still and figuring out what was important to me, what I thought my kids needed, what I thought my family needed. And while I thought just having the family and making my kids happy and things like that would then in turn make me happy, what I recognized that then I was relying on other things other than myself to make me happy, instead of figuring out what was important to me. And my family is important to me, right? But figuring out what's important to you is different than figuring out what's important to your family. Does that make sense? Figuring out what's important to you is different than figuring out what is important to your family. And your family may be the most important thing to you, but it's still different. It is still different. And so you have to do this work and you have to look at what other people are doing as either inspiration or a clue. I want to read another quote here. This one is from Kristen Boss, who had said, "The only difference between comparison and inspiration is the thought you choose when you observe someone who is further along than you." The only difference between comparison and inspiration is the thought you choose after you observe someone who's further along than you. So are we going to use that as inspiration to help us to become better, or to inspire us to make a change, or to inspire us to put something on our bucket list? Or are we going to compare ourselves and look internally like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I do that? Why can't I have that? Why can't I be that already? Right? Those are two very different postures. And it's the thought that you take after you observe someone that makes all of the difference, right? It makes all of the difference. And I want to end with one last quote here. This one is from Betty Jamie Chung that says, "Comparison with myself brings improvement. Comparison with others brings discontent." Comparison with yourself brings improvement. If you're trying to become a better version of yourself, that is amazing. That brings improvement, right? But comparison with others tends to bring discontent. It can bring inspiration, right? We can choose to let it bring inspiration, but do not let it bring discontent. When you are comparing yourself to others in such a way of, I measure up, that is never going to bring you any kind of joy or improvement, because it's hard to be inspired by something that makes you feel less than, right? You can be inspired and truly have joy when you figure out what's important to you and why. You're truly able to be inspired by others. But when we observe others and we are feeling this discontent, we are feeling this, gosh, I should be more, or from this place of not knowing, I feel like that's when we internalize things and go to the negative. It's when we haven't done this foundational work of knowing that we are on the right path for us, of knowing that we are doing the right things for us and for our families, right? This is when we're able to take that comparison and use it as fuel, use it as inspiration instead of using it as something that brings us discomfort and discontent with who we are and with how we're living our life. So I hope this has inspired you to go back, if you have not listened to last week's episode, and listen to that foundational work that I was talking about and what exactly I'm meaning by that, so that you can experience this JOMO, so that you can live your fulfilled life. We have one more piece to talk about in terms of bringing that JOMO into your life, being able to experience that joy, and that is boundaries. We're going to talk about that next time. Okay, till then.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode, Mama. If so, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts and then hit share and send this to a mom who needs this in her day. I'll meet you right back here next week. Keep smiling, y'all.